recording and we are live.
Oh, blimey.
Welcome everyone to this special episode of the Cybersecurity and Cloud podcast. Today we have been released, I need to check the date, the episode with the Lost CISO where we are cracking jokes from the beginning to the end. And we have this special guest that nobody has mentioned who it is, but I think you guys could have read between the line. Allan Alford now is getting to the practice of crashing podcasts and stream. Hello, Allan. Hello, Tom. How are you guys doing?
Very good. Very good.
Doing good here.
Fantastic. Maybe, guys, for who doesn't know on you and is very rare, just a small portion of the population, can you give a little bit of introduction about yourself? Tom, you start, and then Allan, the mysterious guest.
Mysterio, the guest. The one with his name underneath his picture. So mysterious. My name's Thom Langford. I am a recovering CISO. That's where everybody's supposed to say hello, Thom Langford, and clap. I have been a CISO for large companies, large global companies, ranging from 15,000 people up to 85,000 people. Left at the end of January last year and set up my own consultancy. I'm not going to be doing any kind of, very rude commercial advertising of TL2 security at all on this podcast, but yes, so I've got my own consultancy. I also blog under Thom Langford. The Lost CISO is my video series, but it kind of blends in with the blogging as well. And I'm also the sole founder of Host Unknown, a popular skifflebeat combo who produce music videos to do with InfoSec and generally just beg people for money and don't do very well.
And I think you won an award of recent.
I have. Why? Thank you for saying. Yes, so...
not the best t-shirt, that's mine, of course.
Yeah, well...
We want to hide our logos.
Yeah, logos? This isn't a logo.
No, it's just a
yes, so the European Cybersecurity Blogger Awards were early last week, and I was, surprised and very, very pleased to win the most entertaining blog for the Lost CISO, which was fantastic. And actually, Host Unknown also came runner-up in the Legends of Cybersecurity, which, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but Host Unknown will prevail nonetheless.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Do you want to give, we have more for the European folks. Allan is very, very, very well known in US with his own version of the podcast. Allan, do you want to give a little bit of background of
all right, veteran CISO. I've been a CISO for various organizations, telecommunications, currently working for a data services company, a very large data services company, and have also been a CISO at a security company, which is a very interesting role. And I'm the co-host of the Defense in Depth podcast. We have been around now for about a year and a half, weekly episodes. We're available any place you can find a good podcast.
And it's very, very popular. And I really love the format, the engagement with the community really, really works well. I think you have a special chemistry. And I want to talk actually a little bit about the background of running podcasts, running this kind of social engagement and how much work it is, because sometimes folks don't perceive the output results and the ultimate goal, but doesn't have the perception of how much work and planning goes on the back, running the podcast, scheduling, and so on and so forth. But before we jump on the doom and gloom, on the podcast, we usually start on a view on the industry. So, Allan, reversing the circle, do you want to give your more or less view on the industry? How things are? How do you think things are going?
How things are. I think COVID and work from home have been a very dramatic shift in a lot of people's paradigms. I think a lot of companies were caught flat-footed. I think a lot of people ended up with VPN concentrators that were saturated. People made decisions to enable split tunneling to try to alleviate load, and of course that's a huge risk in cyber. Split tunnels on a VPN, not a good thing necessarily. And some folks were in a more modern position, had SaaS-based tooling already at the ready, and those folks are coasting through this fine. So I think the biggest lesson of the last few months for me is SaaS-based security is here to stay, and ought be looked into for those who haven't looked into it thus far. Don't be afraid of the cloud and embrace it.
Thom, I know that you have very, very mild view on the industry. And you can hear all the mild view on the podcast.
Yeah. State of the industry. Well, I guess actually the lockdown has done a lot of good for the industry, primarily because most people in the industry are introverts, and this is what they've been training for their whole lives, just to stay at home and not talk to anybody. So I think on the whole, it's done a lot of good. I mean, quite apart from the fact that, and joking aside, generally speaking, so many companies out there were saying that you can't work from home, we don't trust you, you won't do the work, we don't know what you're doing. And actually, those who, the working from home model, yes, it's been challenging. Yes, it's seen a shift in, how people operate and manage, more importantly, but companies have not collapsed as a result of people working from home. They may have collapsed for financial reasons, dropping of the market and, cash flow and all that sort of thing, but certainly not because of productivity, because I think, people will work just as hard, often harder and often more extended periods of time, because they're not, spending an hour and a half each way into work and all that sort of thing. And they get the flexibility to do things at home when they need to. As regards the industry, I think it is going to be a positive thing. I don't know how many times as a CISO I had to do pandemic planning. Every time there was a pandemic that didn't actually become a pandemic, and then everybody lost interest all of a sudden as soon as it was over, and there was no funding. Well, guys, I don't want to say I told you so, but
Well, we've seen
happens.
BCP planning, and BCP is one of business continuity plan, for who doesn't know BCP, or continuity planning or emergency planning. We can call it the way we want, but I've seen the problem is it never important up to the point where it's important and you need to have it there.
You deal with the things that are going to kill you today, not the things that are going to kill you tomorrow, and that's exacerbated by a lot of companies who are, they're publicly traded and they have to deliver results every quarter, which means everything is so reactive. And as soon as profits might come down a smidgen, then budgets are slashed, etc. And there's no ongoing investment. So I think that's part of a problem. And I've seen that myself, firsthand. You can spot the cycle. When you get your budget, spend it straight away. Don't delay. Front load it if you need to, invest in things that will, come to fruition a couple of quarters later, because frankly, and it's getting worse over the last sort of 10, 15 years that I've been around. Frankly, the way the market is dictating the way companies operate means that there is very little long-term thinking. And let's face it, business continuity is long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Any kind of crisis communications, incident management, crisis management, the whole lot is long-term thinking. And security is long-term thinking, because you're constantly looking to the future to see what it is that you can do now to try and address what's going to happen in the unknown future.
Right.
Well, you can do that in reactive mode. So right now I've seen a lot of people just, risk assessing in a very reactive mode, short-term thinking. And that's kind of the frontal part of our brain reacting to these emergencies and saying, we need to make decision now, for
it's
now.
The primate brain.
Yeah. And I think I've seen accepting a lot of risk. So digital transformation driven by the need of, we need to be connected, we need to be in this. So how you guys seen decision being made this period from a risk perspective, from a security perspective? Are you seeing the shift from pre-COVID to post-COVID?
So for me, and again, with my job, it's interesting. I touch literally thousands of environments. As a delivery CISO, I'm a CISO for a massive estate. And so I get to see a little bit of everything. Some clients have really, truly been prepared. To Tom's point, some folks did that diligence and had that BCP ready to go. Some folks are just now discovering that that's really something they need to invest in. I'm seeing the full spectrum. But I would say to Tom's budget point that BCP is one of those things that thankfully can be done with a very minimal budget, right? It's largely about getting people together in a room. It's largely about paper. It's largely about spreadsheets and collating and uncovering the information you have. Now, once you get to a position that you've got your plan, there's going to be technology spend to actually implement that plan, but you can get an awful lot done on the cheap. And I've been encouraging everyone I know that, hey, take advantage of this, use this, get the attention upstairs, call the meetings, get the people together. One of the biggest challenges for me historically with BCP hasn't been necessarily the budget, but just getting the business to send the people to the meetings, because you need somebody from every department. You've got to have HR there, you've got to have legal there, you've got to have manufacturing there, you've got to have, whatever your business is, you need all the folks involved in that business to sit around the table and spend an awful lot of time. Now is the time to do that. You've got their attention, get them in the room. We call them rooms now. and make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think, budget is one thing, but actual cultural commitment is the other, and I think that's what we should be capitalizing. It's a bit like capitalizing on when you have a breach, asking for huge amounts of budget. It feels a little bit, I don't know, maybe less so across the pond, but over here the Brits feel a bit funny about that sort of thing.
Yeah, budget and money is a very ugly thing to talk, and it's a big
it's filthy talk. You don't want to talk about money. It's it's just not right. But capitalizing on a disaster almost, it just doesn't seem right. But done right and done in a not "I told you so" way, and more of a
lesson learned.
Yeah, let's make this work. I think hopefully this will be a positive step, more rather than actually something that's going to demonstrate decimate the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Alan has mentioned something. So I think in the past, month, I've been discussing with CISOs all across the financial industry, and the main topic has been, how do you connect back from remote? How do you handle your VPN? How quickly can you scale in a VPN scenario? And I've seen any kind of posture, and people, especially in financial industry, saying, absolutely no, the cloud is insecure. Like, we're going in the cloud tomorrow.
Right.
What from your perspective? How has seen like very static, or we used to do this thing and shifting overnight?
I'm seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of things in the field, and again, the full spectrum. Right. I saw people whose VPN infrastructure was already so heavily invested in they didn't need to split tunnel. They just business as usual, but still VPN. Mm-hmm. I've seen the folks that embrace the cloud model that just they were already there. Like there was no difference, right? By the time you've implemented a true SaaS-based solution in terms of secure internet filtering and dynamic encrypted tunnels back to the mothership, like if you have that in place, then COVID was nothing. It's just whatever. They were at home, now they're at home, no change. And I've seen a lot of people invest in VDI infrastructure and beef that up as well. And God forbid, there's a lot more RDP out there. So it's been a spectrum. It's been a full spectrum. But I think some folks were truly prepared for this, be it VDI, VPN, or the more modern SaaS-based solutions.
And I think the RDP is the other side of the pandemic. It's the new pandemic. It's the cyber pandemic that we still need to kill.
But I think much like the working from home scenario, I think it has driven and changed certain expectations of what can and should be done. Hence why companies are now moving to the cloud when before they didn't want to, et cetera, et cetera. I think something that I've always considered to be the case, and will emphasize a little bit now, is I don't really care how people connect back to the office. That's an IT issue. I care about making sure that what is done securely. How that is implemented is up to the IT folks. I'm here to say this is risky, this is less risky, etc. And also during times of crisis like this, it's to say, yes, this is risky, this is more risky, and help organizations make an informed decision on taking on more risk and be more risk, be able to be, more or less risk averse, I should say. So I think, yes, there's a changing in technologies, and I'm sure there's plenty of technology vendors out there rubbing their hands, with invisible soap as they prepare for their phone calls and all that sort of thing. With
together with the toilet paper guys.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Apparently, it's sugar now. It used to be toilet paper, then it was flour, and now it's sugar. Can't get
And
sugar.
glass. I've seen something on glass for some reason. It's like this small necessity that are kicking out. So it was flour, was sugar. Now it's glass for some reason.
I'm gonna have to keep an eye on my greenhouse then.
Right.
But yeah,
that's your BCP plan.
Exactly. Stand inside it and throw stones.
There you go. What can go wrong?
Exactly. So yeah, I think it's, let's be clear, it's not about I don't believe it's about the technology. Yes, certain technologies are less secure and are, they've had their day, you have to move on, etc. But maybe there are other things you can, wrap around it or whatever that allows you to drive every last possible cent and penny out of your technology investment, but in a responsible and risk-aware manner.
Let's remember that I don't know if that's the frontal part of the brain, but we keep on reacting to issue with technology instead of refocusing back on people and process. What I've seen with COVID is the technology was already there. It's just how we use it and how do we prepare the people to actually operate securely. So a lot of traditional environment where you say, well, we have the office, it's secure, it's our Fort Knox. Now they found themselves, well, our Fort Knox is actually distributed in 4,000 homes. So how can we secure the home? And
I remember talking, and when I say I remember talking about this, not as a pioneer by any stretch, like all good, like
we love your modest opinion.
Well,
it comes through all the time.
all good innovators will steal, right? There's no question about that. And I stole this opinion from people I'd heard it from before, which is, the perimeter was gone. Or the perimeter is gone. And that was, 5+ years ago. It's just that it's taken this long for many people to actually understand what that really meant.
Right.
When they couldn't contain 90+% of people inside their perimeter, physical perimeter.
Yep. There's a paradigm shift from active management to more governance, right? And it's interesting because, to your point, the technology, anyone who listens to my podcast knows that I'm all about the people and process over the technology almost every scenario, almost every time. I believe that a CISO's largest job is a cultural job and a sales job far more than, blinky lights, right? But despite that, I think in the face of COVID and I think that distribution, there are certain technical decisions have to be made to successfully be able to govern that sprawled mess, right? Once the dissolution of the perimeter takes place, you've got to still have tendrils out there. And the mantra we use in my shop is see it, manage it, secure it, right? And if you can do those three things, you're covered no matter where you are. And then you get to that cultural battle of how do you train your people, right? There are certain responsibilities, there are certain behaviors on the part of the end user that are really required to do that successfully. Excuse me, and you have to have those lined up and ready to go, but with a minimal change in work style on the part of the user. I think it's fully capable, fully doable. And I think it's mostly about that paradigm shift that I've got to quit acting like I'm fully in charge and like there is a perimeter. Because originally when people scattered to the four winds, people acted like the perimeter went with them. The reality is it's dissolved. There is no perimeter anymore. And the sooner you get over that hiccup, that obstacle, that little roadblock in your thinking, the better off you are.
Well, the perimeter is you as a person rather than anything else.
Exactly.
I don't know if any of the Brits that might be on remember the old Ready Brek adverts with the kid running out with the sort of orange glow around him. That's the perimeter now. Sorry, you might have to be of a certain age and in a certain country. So sorry, but yeah, it's the human interface.
I agree, and I think I've been discussing with a few folks, and they've seen a surge in, of course, social engineering, scam happening, and they channel and they target the same traditional vector. So it's still email, it's still phone calls. They're just exploiting now that it's frictionless, because instead of reaching an office, instead of reaching an environment, they can reach a specific individual that is maybe more vulnerable at home because it's more relaxed, mentally more relaxed. So I've seen a surge in that. Alan, from your field experience, do you see that happening more and more, or how people are tackling?
I've seen studies that are indicating that's happening. Definitely. There's already new studies out that are showing users are making less secure decisions since they've migrated home. In my personal and direct experience, I'm not necessarily seeing that. But I also think that and again, I don't know why I keep coming back to technology in this conversation, because normally I don't. But a strong identity and access management program, you can overcome so much of that anyway. So even if they are being a little more sloppy or a little more loose because they're at home and they've relaxed their own personal security protocols, you can still overcome so much of that with a strong technology back end. So there's that piece to it. And I think people are doing it. I think when you're in your home, you're more relaxed. I think when you're in your home, you feel less like this is a work asset you're working on. I mean, your computer that's in front of you that you're typing away on, yes, it belongs to work, but it's on your desk at home and has been for months now. You start thinking of things as not work. I think the psychology and the comfort factor of home really influence people's behaviors.
I heard somebody describe it the other day as this is not working from home, this is working at home. And there's a subtle, mental shift in that. When you work from home, you go home, you sit on the sofa and you tap away at it a little bit and whatever, whereas this is every day, 9 to 5 or whatever else you do every day. And it's a completely different thing, because you will get very, very used to this environment. And the things that you might normally just shout across the way, or, hey, did somebody send this email or whatever? You've not got that anymore.
Right.
Some people, if you're just working from home for the day, you would wait until the next day to ask somebody else about it. Whereas you are a little bit more isolated as a result. And so you're taking on those decisions yourself. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to people.
Right. And psychologically, go ahead.
No. I was just reiterating, it doesn't. But we are getting used to this new norm. What were you saying, Alan?
Yeah, psychologically, I think there's been a massive shift in people's thinking too. That some of what's coming out of this, I think, is a positive. I think one of the first things that we're all having to experience is we're all at home now. We're at home full time, and we've got kids, and we've got pets, and we've got guys delivering packages, and we've got whatever else might be going on. And you find these live video conversations, Zoom, and whatever else people are using. Those interruptions are happening. That personal life intruding on the workspace is happening on a routine basis. And we're all realizing, hey, it's all of us, right? In other words, we're all getting a sense of each other's humanity a little more. And I think there's a little more vulnerability in communication that's taking place too. And part of that might be this video buffer. It's a little bit easier to talk to your computer screen and share some real confidence than it is, to somebody in person in the office, right? So I think what we're seeing is a massive shift towards a more human workplace and a more vulnerable workplace in terms of people's own personal emotional health and psychology. And I think it's very interesting. It's going to be, when people return to the office, I'm really curious what happens, because I think some of us miss that ability to have that quick conversation. But I think these lessons learned are going to come with us. And I think you're going to find a much more personal style in people's work demeanor going forward, even when they return to the office. I don't know how long that will last, but that's going to have an impact and a shift on everything.
Do you think people will return into the office?
In a lot of cases, yes. In a lot of cases, no. I know for a fact I've got some clients that are already like, this is really working out, And I've got other clients that are like, as soon as we can, let's get them back in the office. So it's the full spectrum. I'm seeing the full spectrum there as well.
And so do you see, maybe for Thom and maybe for Alan, do you guys see maybe companies being completely distributed and them contributing to the expenses at home, because I keep on hearing now the noise of, well, my bill has gone up, I need to purchase new stuff, I want my standing desk. So I was discussing with the guys from Signasal, and they provided all the employees with the standing desk because they were used to that in the office, and now they need to create a working environment. I'm setting up mine to be a standing desk and so on. Do you guys see maybe companies moving towards more contribution of home office as effectively that's the new norm?
I hope so. I think we are going to see the return of certain industries, certain businesses back to the office and fairly normal, but it won't be a wholesale shift. I mean, personally, I've worked flexibly for about the last 15 years roughly, and trending from 4+ days a week working from home to maybe 2 days a week working from home. But then I was traveling a lot, so I had to be flexible. If it didn't fit in my backpack, I wasn't able to use it, etc. But what I did find very quickly within that first 5 years was, if I worked from home for 1 to 2 weeks, I became disenfranchised from the business. I became disenfranchised from actually the goal, the purpose of what we're trying to do. And going to the office helped reconnect. And so, whilst I think the flexible working is brilliant, and I think it's definitely the way forwards, one of two things needs to happen. One, you still need somewhere to go. There should still be a central place where you can have human interaction with your work colleagues and meetings.
Gathering.
Yeah, exactly. But a human, face-to-face contact, or a real investment in the things that you mentioned, a proper working environment from home.
Yeah.
And a real investment culturally in actually getting people together on a regular basis, albeit virtually, but face-to-face, a real investment in proper, decent video conferencing capabilities that will scale, that actually allow people to interact more naturally. Because without that contact, you're losing the soul of your business.
Correct. Alan, what's your view on that?
Yeah, we had a guest on my podcast about 2 or 3 months before COVID hit. And the reason we had her on the show was she had built an entirely 100% distributed workforce for her security team.
Wow.
This was before COVID. She had people all over planet Earth. Everybody was remote. And, it was basically like, what were your lessons learned? We were asking her, you're the expert in this. You've done this now twice, actually, she's done it. And what were your lessons learned? And her principal thing was, to Tom's point, once every quarter, everybody has to get together. I don't care where they are on planet Earth. You pay that money, you fly them, you get everybody in one place at one time for 2-3 days, have a big intensive sort of, we all get to know each other kind of activity. Some of it's work specific, some of it's just getting to know one another. And then the other thing she said is over communication is key. That anytime you've got people at home, the home worker, the boss, whatever, everybody has to over communicate. Send emails, send follow-ups, have Zoom chats, have instant messaging chats. Like make sure that all these things are happening on a constant basis, and people know what you're working on, what your deadlines are. Have more transparency with your workload, and that seems to be a really key component to all this as well. Yeah. And to Tom's point too, there was, back in the day when only some of us were remote, right? That disenfranchisement from the home office. It was a much bigger deal, I think, when it was some of us than now that it's all of us, because there was an inequity represented by that disenfranchisement. And it was not uncommon for the one remote worker to be the one that got passed over for promotion and these kinds of things. And now that it's all of us, I think it's a level playing field again. But these rules still apply. We have to over communicate. We have to latch onto each other through as many means as possible, and we have to have those physical meetups on occasion. There's no way to survive without them.
No, and whiteboard. I've seen a surge finally on whiteboarding tools, and they still don't work, and it's still so challenging. So I've seen Google with their own things, but they're super expensive. The digital whiteboard for Google, they kind of work. Link has, or Microsoft has their own version, but we still haven't breached the whiteboarding. And whiteboarding is the stuff that I find the more rewarding if you are all around, or a sprint planning where you can stick things. I mean, I'm digital, but I'm still with sticky notes everywhere. So those physical, touchy-feely things, those interactions are still there and offer a massive benefit. But I believe, as you were saying, Alan, and also Tom, it's point in time is bringing people together culturally and physically and grouping them up. That group feeling, you can't feel it over remote. And you can only feel it if you touch things, if you go, well, hopefully things, not people, and the whiteboard, and put sticky notes. That interaction, that engagement only happen in a workshop. And if it's point in time, it's cost effective and deliver a massive benefit. And also you save money on the other stuff. So if you don't have an office, you have more money to travel people around, hopefully after COVID.
I'll give you an example of something that will sort of brings coherence to a remote group. So bringing up the European Cybersecurity Blogger Awards again. So that was obviously done over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
That was it was managed by Askenzi, who were the PR firm around it. What they did was they sent out beforehand cocktail making kits from a company, alcohol and alcohol-free ones, obviously. And so you got this kit, and then bring a glass, bring some soda water, bring this, etc., etc. But what it did was they then got somebody who was in on the chat, who then talked through making certain cocktails and the background of it and all that sort of thing. And so you could see everybody on the screens on the right sort of pouring their own drinks and shaking, and
that's making people human.
Well, what it's doing, it's a common tactile activity. Everybody there has got the same kit with the same stuff, and drinking the same thing, unless you really screwed up making your cocktail. I didn't have a shaker, so I stirred it a lot, and it didn't look the same. But that in itself was a really good way of actually engendering a sense of community, even just for that hour and 15 minutes or so. There's something that you could latch onto, and having been on a lot of Zoom calls, obviously, they're really quite dull sometimes, aren't they? Some of these Zoom calls, there's only so many funny Zoom backgrounds you can look at. It
will be interesting to see the disengagement of attention. The attention span is 45 minutes, more or less. If you're doing an activity, it's half an hour. If you're in a meeting, especially if it's dull, it's even less. It will be interesting to see some studies across Zoom and how quickly people disengage.
That's right. How long we got left on this one?
Right.
We have been engaged for 32, so just about time.
Nodding off.
Okay, folks, grab something familiar around you. I don't know.
So I rarely endorse specific technologies. I tend to stay away from the name brands, but there's one application I've latched onto of recent, and that is I don't know what Slack calls them, applets or add-ons or whatever they are for Slack, but there's one called Donut, and it's really simple. Everybody jumps into a channel, and the Donut app resides in that channel, and you set the configuration. Mine's set to once a week. It randomly picks two people from the channel and pairs them up and says, go have a donut. Now, obviously it's Zoom, it's virtual, but basically you're booking a 30-minute meeting with somebody else in the group based on you got randomly paired with that somebody. And so every week you're spending 30 minutes just getting to know someone else on the team. And that's proving to have tremendous value in my community.
I might give that a go, except I'm the only one in my company, so it might be a bit dull.
But you can do that with clients. You can
get a mirror. There you go.
You can do that with clients. You can do that with the dog. We can do that. A number one meeting that I do over the weekend. So it could be a meeting with yourself. I do a meeting with myself every week to actually.
I'll see if I can get the cat interested.
There you go.
Catnip.
But certainly in the larger organisations, I like that. As long as you're not paired, suddenly you've got a SOC analyst who's paired with the CEO. That might be a little bit.
Right. Well, and you can actually fine tune the app for out of your group, in your group, and there's all kinds of things you can do.
Actually, I disagree with you, Tom, because in one of my clients, we had the CEO doing help desk job.
I think it depends on the CEO and it depends on the SOC analyst. But
but it's an interesting perspective where people
absolutely fascinating and certainly valuable for the CEO, or it'd be the most horrific experience for the SOC analyst.
But what I've seen in those situations, and I think it would be a little bit more complicated now, COVID-wise, because we just firefight it, is the learning exercise and the learning curve where you impose, for example, a process, and back to Alan points, people and process. When you impose a process and you don't see the effect of that process, or the pain to go through that process, you don't understand it. Once you actually experience it from the opposite side, so I created a policy, now let's see the policy applied, then you really feel this actually doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And we're missing a little bit of this activity, or I've seen that missing in COVID environment, where everybody's like, business as usual, just focus on the stuff that needs to get us done, like short-term thinking instead of those activities.
Yeah.
So what's your solution for this?
I did have an experience once, though. This was before I was even in security, and the CFO was doing a whistle-stop tour of everywhere, and he wanted to talk to certain people and get feedback and all that sort of thing. And he was, I don't know how many countries he was in that week, but he was jet lagged to hell, and halfway through one of my impassioned speeches, he fell asleep.
And have you questioned, or is your premise is that it was jet lag?
Oh, certainly. No, why would anybody fall asleep in front of me unless,
Clearly impassioned, compelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Humble, absolutely. Very humble.
What are you saying?
I've got a whole room full of my humility and modesty trophies. You want to see them?
Yes. Yeah, mine are
Mr. Humility 2020. Yeah.
I think that's a consequence of being on shows or being live. Your modesty tend to go a little bit down, because you need to be. I think that there is a misconception of you need to be projecting you need to be a persona, and you need to be a specific persona, and it's not humility. It goes a little bit down the drain. So I keep on reminding. I actually have it on the fridge. Be humble. Go down to earth. No, I'm not joking, because you tend to, especially if the show goes well. I mean, Alan knows if the show really picks up, it just fills you up with adrenaline, and it's difficult to keep calm and grounded.
My rule is I use Will Wheaton's law, which is don't be a dick, which I think is that's really what it comes down to. That
right.
comes into play in all of my Twitter replies, all of my the number of Twitter replies I get halfway through and say, "Oh, stop being a dick," and then just delete it.
Right.
So
right.
Or as my mum said, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it. What's So I live by Will Wheaton's law. I think it's a good one.
That's a good one for sure. It's so Will Wheaton's law as well. Actually, that's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah.
And the other one is not the golden rule, but the platinum rule. Don't treat others as you would like to be treated. Treat others as they would like to be treated. Very important distinction. And then the last one for me is we pull each other up. Right. Always keep that in mind, because at any given point you feel like you're the guy, and maybe you've got some mentees you're working with. You better darn well have a mentor as well, right? Because someone's pulling you up just as you're pulling others up. We're all pulling each other up, and as long as you keep that mindset intact, I think the humility and the modesty and the the charity, chastity, prudence, and hope. I think you can keep track of all of that good stuff. I mean, honestly, it's to your point. The persona thing happens; it does happen, but be authentic, speak from the heart, and just remember, you're not all that. There's other people that you're going to learn from every day. And just keep that in mind.
Yeah, don't stab people in the back on the way up, because they're connected to the arses you have to kiss on the way down.
Right.
I love that quote. And actually, that's not stabbing, but mentoring. That's how me and Alan met. Or us kissing. So
yeah, one or the other.
That's how we connect. And one of the reasons why I started with Tanya Jenka, the hashtag Mentoring Monday, that now is called Cyber Mentoring Monday, because somebody decided that was a fashionable trend to actually spam advertising. It was to connect people that want to get mentored and mentee.
I think B-sides do that a lot, or they do that with their rookie track speaking, and I think it's a really good way.
It's amazing.
Getting people connected into the industry and actually, get people to come out of themselves and start sharing their opinions and their the work that they've done and their actually their passion as well, because it's one of the best ways of getting ahead in the industry is to actually help drive that industry forwards and contribute to the community.
And I've started a track also on the podcast to get very young people involved in the podcast to actually showcase their journey into cyber, so that sometimes people shy out because they say, "Oh, that person has done this, and this. I'll never be that person." So it's one element is how do I reach there, and one element is I'm never going to get there. So I'm trying to get it more relatable to people. So we did an episode with Emma Hefner that she didn't still complete university, or she's about to complete, to make it more relatable to more audience and focus on the audience.
I remember after doing my very first public speaking engagement, it was a smallish one, and I spent weeks and weeks working on the presentation. I delivered it, and then I thought, well, that's it. I've got nothing else to talk about.
I've done my bit.
Yeah, I literally. Well, I took all of the knowledge out of my head and put it down into those 10 slides. I'm done. I've got nothing else to give, and it takes a little while to actually, build opinions, to be blunt, to actually take in and synthesize and consolidate all of the stuff you're looking at and put it down into different formats and different subjects, etc. And it took me 6 months to work out that actually I did have something else to say.
Right.
Unfortunately for you guys.
One thing I counsel people on, a lot of people come to me and how do I get started? How do I be a podcaster? How do I do public speaking? Like, how do you maintain this flow of information? And one of the things I always tell people is you may not think much of your own experience. You may not think you have much under your belt, but the reality is no matter who you are, you have experienced something others haven't, and you've certainly interpreted it and learn from it in your own internal way that no one else has for sure. And so even stuff that seems obvious, don't be afraid to step up there and say, hey, here's this thing that's kind of obvious to me, and here's what I learned from it. And somebody in the audience is going to take away something from that experience, guaranteed.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of your own perspective or your own experience, because there is uniqueness there that will bring value if you just simply share it out.
I think it's a very natural human thing to stand on stage and think, this group of people in front of me,
it's going to judge me.
No, combined has a greater knowledge than I do, and therefore I have nothing of value to bring. Now, while that group of people combined may well have a greater knowledge than you do, you're not talking to them as a single unit. You're talking to them as individuals.
One person.
And so individuals will take away lots of different things. Some individuals will take away one thing that is blindingly obvious to you but wasn't to them, and vice versa, etc., etc. Some people will take nothing away, and that, and there's nothing wrong with that. The amount of feedback that said didn't learn anything, thought it was a bit of rubbish. Okay, fair enough. I'm glad you're a minority.
Right.
And I did ask for their address and sent them something, but it was
not someone.
So
out of humility and accepting, the good feedback and the bad feedback.
He woke up with his dog's head in his bed or something like that. I don't know, but that just that says that okay, that this was not the talk for that individual, for that person,
right.
And I think we need to. That's one of the early lessons that a lot of people don't comprehend or don't understand. Yeah, myself included. Everybody thinks that.
Yep.
Understand your target audience. So, Alan, and you guys have done an amazing work on working with your target audience, with the engagement, with the podcast. But can you share a little bit more about the thought process around the episode?
So, we knew up front we wanted to target practitioners, and we wanted people who either were CISOs themselves or were on the path to becoming a CISO. That was sort of the target audience we first spec'd for. And it's spilled out. It just turned out we've gathered a lot more people than that. But the idea with every topic is, I started with, as a veteran CISO, the lessons I learned the hard way. What can I share now that'll hopefully save people the time and the hassle that I had to go through on my own when I didn't have anybody giving me that advice? And we started with that focus and that perspective. And since then, we've tapped into any number of topics. I mean, the show, we release a show every week, and we've covered a variety of topics, mostly, frankly, like I said before, cultural and people and process centric, as opposed to technology centric, but plenty of tech as well. We ebb and flow. A little bit of topical stuff here and there, but for the most part, it's really just in the trenches. What have I learned? Where did I screw up? What did I do wrong? And how do I pass those lessons on to somebody else to save them the hassles, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the focus we took with the show. And it's really taken off. And, to Tom's point, I was scared to death after the first 3-4 episodes. I'm like, now what? Here we are a year and a half into it, and I'm still every day coming up with new topics and new ideas about what we should be discussing. And even some stuff that we discussed a year and a half ago, I want to revisit and do a deeper dive. And I don't think I'm going to run out of material ever, because I've got a wealth and a lifetime of screwing up.
I love that quote.
And everybody else as well.
At the time that's growing up, we have all our lifetime to screw up. But I think what I can pick up from both of you and from my own personal experience is practice. Just get your first step. And my favorite quote is, a journey 1,000 miles start with the first step, right? Yep. So just get it done. Just get it out there. And you have as Alan said, you have a valuable lesson that maybe was your personal one and nobody else has experienced or has experienced in a different way. So just get it out there, because not only you get it out there, you get the feedback, but also other people can avoid that bad experience or good experience or learn from it.
Absolutely.
So in the podcast, I mean, we're all engaged with the community. We all engage in the podcast. Maybe share a little bit of your thoughts. I can share mine on how hard and how much hard work comes from behind of getting this thing live and this thing show. Maybe Alan, you can give a very quick description of the flow from the engagement to the delivery in the podcast.
So for those who don't know Defense in Depth, if you haven't listened, the idea is it's our clever little play on words. We pick one topic each show and we go into it in depth, Defense in Depth. And we were so proud of ourselves for that name. Patting ourselves on the head and congratulating each other.
I've just seen what you did there. Go.
In depth. Get it? So what we do is we pick a topic. We pick something we're interested in, something I've always wanted to discuss, something somebody in the audience suggests sometimes, something that's maybe even topical on occasion. And the first thing that happens is I'll get a post going on LinkedIn and start a conversation, because I'm a big believer in not just broadcasting my crap out there into the universe, but having meaningful conversations. And so if you look at my posting style on LinkedIn, I'm all about engagement. I'm all about bringing people in, asking questions, getting a dialogue started, and letting the groupthink start to take over on a given topic. And then what we do is we pick a smart guest and we find somebody who's got some background with that particular topic. And then the two of us will go through what the community came up with, and we'll sort of analyze it and deconstruct it and sort of together craft a notion. And within the end of the 25-minute show, we've kind of come to a conclusion and a consensus around whatever that topic is. Now, that takes a lot of work. That's a couple of hours of thinking about a topic, an hour of crafting the post on LinkedIn, then sifting through people's comments and reading, putting together we have a playlist, a run book, whatever you want to call it, for each show. We're pre-recorded, so you're allowed to screw up, but we try to stay as live as much as possible. In other words, like rarely do we re-record. Somebody breaks out in a sneezing fit or something like that. But we try to keep it fresh. We try to keep it live, and it's not scripted per se, but we at least know the themes and topics we're going to be hitting on. I'll jot down my thoughts beforehand, but I'm not sitting there reading my thoughts, right? I'm speaking naturally. And so that's kind of our whole MO and our whole method. And it's quite a lot. Any given, 25-minute podcast, therefore, between me and my partner, who does most of the heavy lifting, by the way, he's the one who hustles the sponsors and manages the audio stuff and the production and the voice actors and everything else. Because we have people that come in and do bumpers for us. We have people that come in and do the sponsor commercial for us, and all of that stuff he manages. But I would imagine total between his effort and mine, A 25-minute podcast is probably realistically 5 hours of work.
Yeah. And I've doubled
and
that,
that's kind of our pattern.
And I've doubled that amount for the post editing, and you know,
we pay someone else to do that for us.
I do the heavy lifting myself, for example.
So it could be as much as 10 hours for a 25-minute show is where we are. But it's polished. It's got good production values versus a lot of them out there in the industry. I think we've got a higher quality of product, not necessarily like I'm responsible for the content. David's responsible for the polish and the production values, and I think we have incredibly good production values. That's 100% on him. Hopefully, the quality doesn't suck. That's on me.
It's a good balance, though. It's a good balance, though, and your humidity price. Here you go.
There you go. My job. I always laugh. His job is to make it sound good. My job is to not screw up. Right. That's it. As long as I can come in there and sound not stupid, we probably have a show.
There's a joke in there about extra hours of effort.
Right.
Tom, how about you?
Well, one thing, Alan has answered a question for me that I've had about the Defense in Depth podcast, which is they invite smart people on, which actually now explains why I've not been invited on. But
yet.
But so I do a variety of stuff. So I've done everything from just regular blogs. I do a podcast with Host Unknown. Ours is less polished. There's only so much polishing that a turd can take, to be honest with you. But that's myself, Javad Malik, and Andy Agnes. And if you've met any of them, you'll know that when the three of us get into a room, we are.
Chaos.
I think our IQ drops by about 10 or 15 points. And so we do very little preparation. But we do have a structure. So we have a tweet of the week. We have a Billy Big Balls of the week. We have the Little People section, and we have industry news. And we created jingles about 6 years ago, which we're still using. Because we haven't got any sponsors to pay for more, but actually what we do and what we've had feedback, and the feedback is that actually it's just three blokes having a laugh but talking about infosec and not taking it too seriously. It's a bit like Top Gear or the Grand Tour or something like that. We're just there because we want to be there, and we're talking about stuff, but we'll meander through. Each one lasts about an hour, which is quite a long time, but but the most of the effort is in the post-production, so which I do, and also as you know, Javad and Andy, they run their mouths a lot, so I have a lot of editing and beeping out to do. There's whole sections that we can't use because of one comment at the end or whatever, so editing that, that probably takes about 2 to 3 hours a week, something like that. We're only on episode 10 now, I think, something, so we've barely touched it. The first episode was released about 5 years ago, and then episode 2 came out 8 weeks ago. So, just don't put, three fellas, on lockdown together, because all they do is create yet another podcast.
And we've seen a flourish of those. We see Kevin with the dumpster fire. Everybody is taking the time, but as Alan said, there is so much content out there, but to deliver good quality content, it takes legwork.
And I'd like to apologize to my clients up front. I'm about to start a newsletter. So that's how much
yet
time
another content.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But we also do videos. So we've done music videos, for instance. Now they are intensive. They're really difficult because getting the three of us in the physical location at the same time happens about once a year at best, which is quite difficult. The song has to be written. The lyrics have to scan perfectly. Otherwise, Andy gets upset and decides to, throw a hissy fit or something. And then we have to re-record. Then we have to, find a venue, find a director, find the extras, all of that costs money. So each one of those, that'll be a full day of filming plus about 2 to 3 weeks of post-production work, all in about £5,000 a piece. Basically because we have to hire everything. There's no economies of scale, but we do that. We've done sort of 3 of those, and then we work with other folks as well. So, and then I do my Lost CISO stuff, because this episode is all about me, obviously. The Lost CISO stuff is I did some last year that were done with a green screen and got produced actually by my son, who's going to become a film director.
Nice.
So he's very talented on that front. And this year, because I couldn't afford to pay him, I did them myself. So this year it's a little bit more lo-fi, etc. But the point is the same: is that it's 2 to 3 minutes of just 2 camera. This is a subject. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Just if you take away one thing, this is the one thing you need to take away. And the point is, you can't keep anybody's attention, certainly on video, for any longer than that, without some kind of bigger hook, like music, like celebrities, like whatever. So that's the principle. And they take a long time. They take about 3 hours post-production, minimum, plus then there's a blog that goes with it, etc. So there is a huge amount of effort behind each one of these. And normally in quite a concentrated period of time that you can then release over a period of time if need be.
Yeah, and you build the schedule.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we all experience the hardship, and you see the good and polished work, and you have to go out there and compete with what it's a differentiator, with the quality that you bring in, the host and the subject, and ultimately it's communicating outside, communicating it consistently, and consistency. I found that consistency is king.
Consistency and quality. I was thinking about releasing, I think I will as a result of this. I did a pilot or a test for the Lost CISO a couple of years ago, and I sent it to Jav and Andy because they always tell me the truth. And they said, basically, they took one look at it and said, do not release this. This will harm your career if you release this. So I'm thinking of actually releasing it as this is what it could have been, isn't it awful, etc. Because
right.
I was trying to do it on the cheap. I was trying to, make it, making something look cheap can be expensive. If you see what I mean,
Right.
But if you do something on the cheap, it looks terrible. Making something look cheap can look good, but will cost money, if you see what I mean.
Right.
So, there's a real distinction in production quality between somebody just holding an iPhone or whatever in front of their face, and somebody actually going through proper post-production and trying to, put bookends the whole thing with music and, and a sequence and cut into different cameras and all that sort of thing. That's difficult.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes.
No, definitely video, and that's why I decided to take, for example, the podcast audio only, because people can ship and jump between the section and decide what to listen to, and then doing this special live episode to bring, okay, this is the face behind some of these podcasts. These are the guests, and we will have Alan soon. Thom is live today, so the new episode is with Thom. I haven't beeped too much. We have gone on a rant on CISP and so many other topics, so please then tune in. But
I blacked out all the way through it. I can't even remember what I said.
Well, you can listen to the podcast and remind yourself.
Yeah, I think I will. I'm going to cringe in the corner, I'm sure.
But before we close off, where we can find your podcast or your episode or your stuff over the web, and maybe just announce it and then put in the comment as well, so that folks can see.
So my blogging is at Thom Langford, THOM Langford. My host unknown is hostunknown.tv, and on Twitter at hostunknowntv. The podcast is podcast.hostunknown.tv. We don't go into these elite hacker names or anything like that. It's what we are. It's what we're called. And the YouTube is the Lost CISO, but you can get the links from that from everywhere else. And the final site that I use as well is tl2security.com and at tl2security on Twitter.
How about you, Alan, in the last couple of minutes?
All right, so Defense in Depth, the podcast is literally available everywhere. Google, Android, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Last.fm. There's even RSS feeds. You can find Defense in Depth almost anywhere you go for podcasts. I'm also available at allanalford.com, and I've got a resources page there that I do a lot of Creative Commons, sort of open source, materials for the community. I've got various, just things I've thrown out there, presentations and things are up there as well. On LinkedIn, I'm Allan Alford. Look me up there. Feel free to connect. And on Twitter, where I'm not very active, but I'm starting to get into it, I'm at Allan Alford in TX in Texas. And that's it.
Great.
And for all the folks, you can listen to the Cybersecurity and Cloud podcast. We're on Spotify, iTunes since last week. The first season is I'm still post-producing and bringing it back, but the new season is live and well. We're going live every Monday with the new episodes, and as well, you can find us at www.nsc42.co.uk/CSCP for both of the seasons. Or if you want any of my blog posts, video, we're on YouTube. Just find NSC42 or LinkedIn, YouTube, or not Instagram, but LinkedIn.
And host unknowns on Instagram as well, because we're down with the kids.
Oh God. Okay, guys.
Hey, fellow kids.
Yeah, that's right.
No, the new fellow kids on TikTok actually. And I have my girlfriend that is trying to convince me to do funny TikTok. I say, I don't want my face associated with TikTok and other stuff. I like to be public, and I have a reputation, hopefully, and I want to maintain that reputation.
If you want to see the face of TikTok addiction, just look at Andy Agnes.
Thanks, but no thanks. But
Yeah,
before we close, I'd like to thank you, both of you guys. And if you can, as tradition of the podcast, if you can give a 5 seconds or a 10-second positive message about cybersecurity before we close off, especially during COVID, that would be grand. Alan.
If it was a tradition, you should have asked.
Right. I was looking at the comments here. Sorry. Can we have podcast links, please, for Alan and Tom's? Thank you for that tip on speaking, presenting. I was looking at our live comments, and I completely missed your question.
5-10-second positive message about cybersecurity.
Positive message about cybersecurity. It feels like we are losing sometimes. It feels like we're fighting an uphill battle, because we are fighting an uphill battle. That's why it's going to feel that way. Don't mistake an ideal and perfect end goal for the fact that each step of the journey, you're actually improving the security posture of your organization. In other words, it's a cyclical process. There is no real end goal in sight. It's about doing the right things, doing them consistently, doing them repetitively, adding a new level of depth each time you go through the cycle, and improving things and making them better and better. It's okay to have small and incremental wins. Let yourself celebrate those.
How about you, Tom?
I think it might be a sort of slight continuation segue on that, which is basically for most people in our industry, I'm talking like 99.9% of our industry, when things go wrong, just chill out. Nobody died. When you're not sure what you should be doing, just ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And you'll know which way to go then. And finally, again, I'm going to reiterate Whedon's law: just don't be a dick.
And I like to effectively go back on the last thing: don't be a dick. Just be humble. Or if you can't be humble, just come out like you.
Be quiet.
Be a human being. Be a human being, and relate with other people like human being. Communicate. Just be nice. Be nice. Share positive. And everybody knows me. I share positivity, even in the podcast. And have a laugh.
Yeah,
fuck it, we only have a life.
Info security isn't funny, but it can be fun.
Exactly. We can make it fun. We can make it fun.
There we go.
I'm going to go with that one. The other two were a bit rubbish.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a blast. We've gone just above an hour. Let's see who maintained the attention span.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the stage.
Great to see you, buddy.
See ya.